right, everybody, here we are for week 9, now showing with Mike and Wayne. Since this will be releasing on Friday the 28th, it is now very excitedly and happily Bill and Ted Day on Friday, August 28th. Everybody watch Bill and Ted. Everybody watch Bill and Ted Face the Music. I know I'll be watching it on Friday, and I'm sure Wayne will as well, or we'll find a way that we could both watch it so we could talk about it.
Excellent!
But to continue on with week 9, we're going to go into video game movies. It's a very controversial movie genre because most people think they suck. Maybe it's not very controversial. Maybe it's very black and white. I don't know. So we're going to start with the first of its kind. It was the biggest, still to this day, probably the biggest video game franchise of all time, and that is Super Mario Brothers. In 1993, they had this movie come out called Super Mario Brothers. And unfortunately, aside from the characters' names, this movie did not resemble Super Mario Brothers at all. They were plumbers. One of them was Italian, even though they were brothers. John Leguizamo is obviously very much not an Italian person. They kind of tried to pass it off as such. Great that he got cast in that kind of role. Awesome for him. Trash movie. Dennis Hopper as King Koopa, Bowser, whatever he was. It's a mess.
He was King Koopa. That was what the character was called.
Yes.
But...
he was King Koopa, but that's about as big of a stretch as we're going to go with that. It is in name only. They had a Yoshi, which was a dinosaur. They had the Koopas and the Goombas. The Goombas, I think, were like they almost looked like they were supposed to be the Koopas because they were the giant like turtle monster looking things, but they were definitely the Goombas because they had the small head. It's a mess. If you haven't seen the movie, I do recommend watching it just to see how bad a movie can be.
Do you remember the TV show Super Mario Brothers Power Hour?
Yes.
What? I feel that Captain Lou Albano was a much better Mario than Bob Hoskins. I'm saying it. No disrespect to the late great Bob Hoskins, but it just did not fit.
And it's not that because I like Leguizamo too, and obviously Dennis Hopper is great. It wasn't their fault. Like if you actually read, there's a whole behind the scenes of how this movie was a disaster. And Leguizamo, since he's still alive, talked about it recently, and it was just it was a mess behind the scenes. Bob Hoskins didn't want to be there anymore. Dennis Hopper didn't want to be there. The directors had no idea what they were doing. It was the beginning of this big super franchise that they were hoping to create. And the problem is nobody wanted it to be like the video game, but the video game is why people wanted to see the movie. So when you do something like that and you change the whole look of it, the style of it for the time, it was very dark too. It was all under in the sewers only, basically. And then you have a Princess Peach who's like a warrior, which is fine, but it just didn't make any sense. And then she's a plumber at the end. Then they're a family of plumbers. I don't know what the hell was going on in this movie. I didn't think most of the people knew what the hell was going on in this movie. It just didn't work, and it took, in my opinion, it took a couple years for them to get something close to working. And this is one of the first ones I want to talk about positively. I'll mention the other movies that happened. They did Double Dragon, which was awful. They did Street Fighter, which, you know what? Watch it if you want. Get drunk and watch it, because it's one of those movies that you can just have a good time with it and how terrible it is. We'll get more into the detail on that later. But yeah, it's just it has to be seen. I'll just say that. But in 1995, in August of 1995, they released a movie called Mortal Kombat. Now, Mortal Kombat is a great video game series, in my opinion. It's very violent. It's very bloody. The movie was PG-13. So right then and there, you get a mark against yourself for taking a video game that's very violent and making it PG-13. However, I thought they did a good job with it. It was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. It was one of his earlier works. He would later go on to do another video game series that we'll talk about, and he's actually working on another one right now. But this was his first one, and he did a good job. He assembled a good cast. He basically copied Enter the Dragon. I think that helped, though. That helped them with this story because that gives them the story. Then you're just focusing on the characters of Liu Kang, Johnny Cage, Sonya Blade, who I think were all played very well by their actors in this film. It's a fun, exciting kind of throwback 90s action flick. So it's on Netflix right now if you can catch it. I saw it in theaters. I really enjoyed it. Christopher Lambert was probably my favorite. He played Raiden. I know that's whitewash. The whole movie there's a lot of whitewash casting in this movie, and it's just unfortunate in the 90s that's where we were at a lot. Robin Shaw, though, played Liu Kang. He did a good job, I thought. Lyndon Ashby played Johnny Cage. Shang Tsung was played by Kari Hiroki Tagawa, who's actually been added into the games recently. They have his version of Shang Tsung in the games. Bridget Wilson played Sonya Blade. Talisa Soto played Princess Katana. Trevor Goddard played Kano. You kind of had all these characters there, and they were all done, for the most part, correctly, which I think is a big thing. They may kind of have messed with the story a little bit, but getting the characters right is an important part for when you're doing an adaptation like this, and I think that they did a good job with that. So that's why, to me, it sticks out as like the first one that kind of hit the mark. How did you feel about Mortal Kombat, Wayne?
I don't remember ever seeing it. I hate fighting games. I get bored after about 20 minutes playing these things. So, well, first and foremost, I'm also not very good at them. So that's probably why I hate them and find them boring. Complete honesty. So I stayed away from this one, just like I stayed away from other fighting genre movies like Street Fighter. So I really don't have an opinion. Okay.
So in 97, we get one of the worst video game movies ever, after in my opinion, one of the better ones ever, is Mortal Kombat Annihilation. They totally missed the mark on this one. It's terrible. It's awful. Don't see it. Unlike Street Fighter and Super Mario Brothers, you don't have to see it. I don't recommend it. Don't watch it. Wing Commander, which was based on, it was a Star Wars video game, wasn't it? Wasn't Wing Commander based in that universe?
I do not know. I always get Wing Commander confused with P-Wing.
Maybe that's what I'm confused with. Whatever. It's a video game movie with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Matthew Lillard. Unfortunately, Matthew Lillard had to tie himself to Freddie Prinze Jr., so they did like 10 movies together, even though I think Matthew Lillard was the better of the two. So moving right along, you had probably one of your next biggest budget ones, the two back-to-back actually, your two biggest budget video games movies to this day. 2001 was Lara Croft Tomb Raider. Big star, Angelina Jolie, just coming off her Oscar. Big budget action flick. Not very good. It was entertaining to a point, but it wasn't. And I never played the game, so I can't even tell. This is more just a movie opinion of it. I played the game a little bit, but like just based on a movie, like it just wasn't very entertaining. I know fans didn't care for it. I thought she was good, but Angelina Jolie, I like her in anything, so it really doesn't matter.
What do you think about the Lara Croft character? She fits like a mold or like the character critique or characteristics, I guess you could say.
Yes.
She looks like Lara Croft. So you think, hey, good stuff. And I mean, she's in this with their father, John Voight, Ian Glenn, Noah Taylor, Daniel Craig is in this film.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if he was in this one or the second one, but yeah, he was an early role for Daniel Craig.
Not a bad cast lineup, but I guess it's just, between story and, I don't know a lot about this either. I saw it when it came out, 19 years ago. Saying that out loud is kind of disheartening, but hey, moving on. I don't know. I'm with you. I was like, okay, but nothing memorable about it. Angelina Jolie, looked very attractive as always, but
this one just didn't deliver.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that was it.
I don't know if it was the acting or what, but
the whole movie was just a misfire. So a year later, though, or less than a year later, we get one of my favorite video game adaptations, and I know a lot of people that play the video game aren't big fans of it because it doesn't look like the video game necessarily, but I thought it was awesome because it's a horror movie, and that's Resident Evil, starring Milla Jovovich, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, director of Mortal Kombat, her husband, and I really enjoy this movie. The first one especially. We'll obviously touch on the other rest of the movies in the franchise, but this one to me is the best one. And it's violent, it's bloody. It's like a Saw movie before Saw. There were death traps and stuff that you're kind of, when you watch it again, you're waiting for. It had the zombie dogs in it, which was really cool. It is funny. You could tell it was a little bit lower budget because when you go back and look at it, like 4 characters die by the same trap. So that was just tells you they didn't have a lot of room to shoot it in a bunch of different places.
It was a pretty cool trap, though.
Oh, it was. It was really, yes.
This is my favorite video game movie. This whole series, all 27 movies that he has made. I think there's only 7, maybe 8, but...
There's 7, yes. 7 of them.
There's something about each of these that I just love so much. And yes, it's true. It's not... Granted, you'll get the Resident Evil characters sprinkled in throughout the run of all 7 movies, 8 movies.
Yes.
But yeah, it really really focuses on the character that is not in the video games at all.
Yes.
The Alice character.
Alice character, yes. And which Mila plays it so well. I mean, it took her to a level to where, like, I think people could see her as an actress that could do more than just look pretty, which is something that I think Fifth Element definitely set her apart. This just continued that. This continued that her projection of being a star, being an action star. One of the biggest female action stars of the last 20 years. I mean, they made, like you said, they made 7 of these movies in the last 18 years. She did a pretty good job with it. So I think people kept making money.
I think this is definitely a series we're going to need to review, maybe in the October.
Exactly. Yeah, this is why we're not going to talk all about it because it is definitely something we could talk about all the movies by itself. But I just want to go over the cast of the first movie too. You had Mila Jovovich, Michelle Rodriguez, Eric Mabius. Just a really good cast overall. Good horror movie. Like I said, whether it's based on a video game or not, I just thought it was a solid movie. Like you said, Wayne, it was your favorite. It's one of my favorite video game movies that they've made because it was so good. So then after that, you got Tomb Raider 2, no one cares. House of the Dead, even worse. Resident Evil Apocalypse, like we talk about, we'll talk about these movies in full more. Good follow-up. Alone in the Dark, whatever. Uwe Boll, that's all I gotta say. If you know who Uwe Boll is, he made a crap ton of really awful video game movies in the early to mid-2000s. And they're all on this list. Then came in 2005, a movie that should have been really good, but really dropped the ball, and that was Doom. And it was pre-Dwayne Johnson. It was more when he was still Dwayne The Rock Johnson, or just The Rock. And he wasn't a big star yet, so he wasn't even the main character. Carl Urban, who I like, was the main character. Did an admirable job. It just wasn't very good. It didn't do what Doom fans wanted. It had one sequence of the first-person shooter towards the end where he kind of goes crazy. The Rock ends up being like the villain. It had Rosamund Pike in it, an early role for her. She was good in it right before she hit big. It actually is the same year that she hit big with Pride and Prejudice. I saw it in theaters. I really didn't think much of it afterwards. It's a decent action movie, I guess, but as a Doom movie, it just really wasn't very good. Okay, then we go. You got anything you want to say about that one, Wayne, or no?
No, you hit the nail on the head. It's a disappointing Carl Urban and Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie.
You know what? I honestly kind of like to see them do it today, because I think The Rock could do an awesome Doom movie today if he's in charge of it and is the one making the decisions. So that would be interesting.
It is not the worst Doom movie ever made.
It is not the worst Doom movie. That to tease everybody. So then Blood Rain, Uwe Boll, terrible. Okay, and then to one of my other favorite ones, Silent Hill. Silent Hill is, again, whether people if it's based on the game, obviously. I didn't play the game much. I played it a little bit. It's a good horror film. It's a really good horror film about like a ghost demon town that these people wander into, like the afterlife. Just a really cool movie. I really liked it. Christoph Gans directed it. Roger Avery, who I'm a fan of, wrote the screenplay with Gans. It starred Radha Mitchell, Sean Bean, Laurie Holden, Deborah Kara Unger, Kim Oates from Sons of Anarchy. Really good cast. Just a good movie all around, I thought. Again, video game people, I think, were a little disappointed because it wasn't just like it. But I think it had enough of the characters in it, enough of the villains in it, that it did well. It did well for fans, and it did well at the box office. Dead or Alive, that was I think there was a volleyball movie. I don't know what the hell that was. That was crap. Don't watch it. Yeah. Postal, the only Uwe Boll video game movie I would recommend. It's pretty raunchy and derogatory, though, so it's one of those kind of like trashy B movies that actually has some value to it, unlike most of his movies. Hitman, I liked Hitman. It's a bad movie, but I thought Timothy Olyphant was good in it, and it was just a good action movie. Olga Kurylenko was good in it. God, there are a lot of Uwe Boll movies. Another disappointing one, too, that should have been good just because it should have just been a cop movie, was Max Payne. And they really, really dropped the ball on this movie. I don't know what happened. Wahlberg, you think, action movie, he's usually a hit with that. You add Olga Kurylenko as the drug addict sister, and then you have Mila Kunis, who we love here at the show. And it was just a disaster. I love the Max Payne games. I played those a lot, and I couldn't believe what they did. The slow motion stuff wasn't very good. I was just like, what?
The bullet time, if you
which
will.
they took from the Matrix for the video games. By the way, it's not like they came up with that. They're just like, hey, the Matrix did a cool thing with that. We're going to make a video game with that.
The thing about the video games that was so cool, it was such a psychological mind screw.
Yes,
with just the trails of blood that you're running on and just the emotional turmoil that the Max Payne character that you're playing is going through. And I just feel that most of that was missing from the Max Payne movie.
It was. It really was. They kind of used Mila Kunis' character for that because her sister dies. And then it's like, oh, so we're leaving all the traumas through her. And he's just like, got to save them or something. It was just, it's forgettable. I don't remember much about it except who's in it. So I just don't watch it. Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li. I only mentioned this movie because I actually watched this movie. Most people didn't. It's awful. Chris Klein is terrible. It's not a good movie. Don't watch it, please. Tekken I never saw. Prince of Persia, Jake Gyllenhaal. That one obviously took a big hit because not only was it not a great movie, but they whitewashed it completely, as I don't believe there were many Middle Eastern characters in it in the Prince of Persia. There were no Persians in it that I can remember, which, people got upset by that, and I can understand. I didn't think it was a terrible movie. I thought it was okay. That could be my love for Jake Gyllenhaal shining through. But, it is what it is. It wasn't very good. They never made another one. Surprise, surprise. And then what's funny, you get two Resident Evil movies back-to-back, 2010, 2012. Those are the next two video game movies. Like we said, we'll have a whole conversation about that series. They're enjoyable. If you haven't seen them, start watching them. And then you get the sequel to Silent Hill. God awful. I watched it. I don't know if you saw it, Wayne. It was terrible.
I didn't even bother.
It's really bad. I think it has like Kit Harington in it. Like that was the big draw for me because
Commander.
I waited so long to see it that I'm like, oh, Kit Harington's in it. I'll watch it. I knew who he was by that point, and I was like, wow, this movie's terrible. Need for Speed. I saw that crap too. That was awful. Aaron Paul. I love Aaron Paul. Not a good movie.
Yeah, bitch! Fast cars!
Yes, it was like Fast and the Furious, but Need for Speed.
But not good.
Yeah, exactly. Hitman.
I feel like it need Paul Walker.
Need for Paul Walker, yes. Hitman, Agent 47. Never saw that one either. Heard it was awful. Warcraft. Heard it was awful. Never saw it. Assassin's Creed. Heard it was awful. Never saw it. Resident Evil Final Chapter. We'll talk about this one for a little bit. That's the last one that Mila did. I really liked it. I thought it was a good it kind of had elements of the first movie and the rest of the series to it. Like it was an action movie. Because after the first movie, let's be honest, the Resident Evil series is mostly an action-adventure series. The movies. Mm-hmm. The seventh one, I felt, brought back a lot of the horror elements to it, while also keeping the action-adventure part to it as well. So I really dug this one a lot. I know it wasn't well-received, but I really like this. Paul W.S. Anderson came back to direct this one. He didn't do all of them. He only did a handful of them. I like this one. Wayne, what do you think?
I love all of them. I do. You know what? Hey, judge me if you will, but because I love the video game, I always found something to enjoy about this, even though the Alice character and whatnot. It's just, it had enough to it, and the fact that it's a video game-inspired movie that's really just a good horror series. Mm-hmm. I'm a scaredy cat when it comes to this stuff, but there's just something really, really enjoyable about this. And I guess it's because I equate it to my love of the video game. It has enough stuff that I can recognize from those games to accept that, all right, it's a Resident Evil game. And, who doesn't love a good zombie? Like, if you like zombies, which I enjoy zombie movies, I'm currently watching Train to Busan right now, finally. So we'll talk about that at some point in the near future, or probably at the end of this. But, Yeah, it's great. All 7 of them are fantastic, and like I like that this one has resurrected some characters, or maybe it was the one before this one. They resurrected some characters that have been killed from the movies.
Yeah, no, this one they brought back some of the characters. Yeah, it was a good way that they did it too. It wasn't cheap at all. I liked how they did that. Okay, so then kind of from there till now, honestly, it's been a lot of hits. At least box office wise, critic wise, whether people liked them or not. I liked most of these movies we're going to mention. Tomb Raider, the newest Tomb Raider, while Alicia Vikander doesn't really look like Lara Croft like Angelina Jolie did, much better movie, much better action adventure movie. It's not great, don't get me wrong. It could have been better. But when it was over, I wasn't like, oh, I wasted my time. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. They are making another one, which surprised me because I didn't think this one did very well. But they are going to go with another one. So we'll see how. I'm excited about that because I liked her in it. Then we get Rampage. Rampage with The Rock. Entertaining. Not like the video game really, but it would have been weird if it was, I think. Because you can't, that whole style would have been just bizarre.
Yep.
But it was fun. They did a good job with it, I thought. I don't know. I enjoyed it, Wayne. What did you think?
You got The Rock and you got monsters destroying cities. What else could you ask for?
Yep. And you got Jeffrey Dean Morgan, too, along for the ride.
If you don't take it too seriously, I don't know how you could take this movie seriously. It was fun. I mean, obviously, at the time, with the place we were working, had a pretty big tie-in to this film.
Yes.
With the monster truck and whatnot. So I felt I needed to be loyal and I needed to like this. And, it had enough action and stuff to keep me satisfied. So.
Oh, it's by no means perfect. It was just a fun movie, I thought. So the next 2 are more kid-friendly. Detective Pikachu. Ryan Reynolds, the voice of Detective Pikachu. Very fun movie. I felt, my son really liked it. I felt a little out of place watching it because I've never played the games really, except with him. I never was a Pokemon person. But it's a fun movie. It does lots of cool things. The special effects look really good. The characters look awesome in the CG animation. It's fantastic. Did a really good job with that, I thought. Did you see that one, Wayne, or no?
He's hit and miss with Pokemon, but it was just something that he wasn't interested in seeing. So, in time, I'm sure I'll get around to seeing it at some point. But...
Yeah. And then earlier this year, we had Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie. I really liked this movie. This movie was controversial to start because everyone hated how Sonic looked. They hated it so much that the studio changed it and made him look like Sonic. And they obviously knew they had a good movie here because it worked. Everything worked, what they did. The cast was great. I thought it was a lot of fun. Probably one of the best video game movies I think that they've made. And now I believe the same people are going to try to make a Mario Brothers animated movie like this. It's a good idea, I think. I think they can handle it.
On the topic of that, not to piggyback or chime in here, but I'm chiming in anyway.
Do you have a genre or a game that you can't believe they haven't tried to make a movie about yet? For me, it's the Legend of Zelda series. I cannot believe that they haven't done something, whether it's animated or something live action. It seems like that, with its success and its fan following, is a no-brainer. But again, with the path of not succeeding,
it's hard. It's hard now to get video game companies to want to give their rights to movie studios because they've screwed up so many. One of the ones that I think, as a horror fan, that I would love to see would be Devil May Cry. I was always a big fan of that series. I haven't gotten into finishing video games until recently, so I didn't finish a lot of them, but I played them. I enjoyed them. I always liked the Devil May Cry series. I think that would make a really cool movie. There's some that just you really want to see. One we're going to get in. So moving on, that's Sonic the Hedgehog is kind of capped off the video game adaptations. We're going to get into some video game based movies here in a minute. But coming up, though, we have a Mortal Kombat reboot, which produced by James Wan, coming out next year. I'm excited for that. It's going to be fatalities, which is awesome. Tomb Raider 2, Monster Hunter, which is actually directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. Like I said, we keep talking about him, and we do. Him and his wife decided to make this movie. I'm not familiar with that video game, but it could be cool. The one I'm excited about now, because I just finished the second game, and I'm on to the third one, is the Uncharted series. They just got back to filming. I really like the series. I hope they stick to the games because the stories are there. They're basically Indiana Jones as a video game series, and they've already written you the screenplays. Just keep it like that, and I think people will really dig what they do.
Uncharted actually killed an Indiana Jones video game series because it was so successful.
Well, that's interesting. I did not know that. But I really dig those games. I'm working my way through them now.
Indiana Jones game in the work very, very early.
Okay. So yeah, and obviously Sonic the Hedgehog 2. There's a Minecraft movie on here. I don't know what that's going to be. Probably an animated film, I guess. There's so many more they're working on. But let's get right into... we're going to skip over the animated stuff right now because, honestly, I haven't watched most of that. We're going to go into movies that were inspired by video games. So movies that weren't necessarily based on them. And we're not going to go in order here. We'll just pick out a few to talk about. We'll start with Wayne. I know you want to talk about Ready Player One. Let's get right into that one.
Sounds good. Ready Player One, 2018. Gosh, here's the synopsis of it. When the creator of a virtual reality called The Oasis dies, he makes a posthumous challenge to all Oasis users to find his Easter egg, which will give the finder his fortune and control of his world. Now, I did not get to read the book before this movie came out, but I knew a lot about it. There's a lot of cameos from a lot of classic games and movies and stuff in this, and I'm just not even sure where to begin with breaking this down. So I'm going to give you the floor, and then I'm just going to respond and chime in, because I think you are going to have a much better breakdown of this movie than I am, because when I think of this, I go in all different directions. Like, oh my God, that's a DeLorean. Oh, it's a Bigfoot. Oh my God, it's the Turtles in.
Okay, so Ready Player One, it's based on the Ernest Cline novel of the same name. It's a pop culture explosion, we'll say, in this book. Like, you read this book, and it just all these challenges you have to go through, the video games they have to play to get these Easter eggs that they need to find to get the fortune. It's kind of like a Willy Wonka type experiment. Where the winner gets, to own the whole shebang. But you got an evil corporation that's trying to take that from everybody. That's, from book to movie, that's what they keep. You have the player played by Ty Sheridan, the main character. He is Wade Watts, or Parsival is his name in his video game world. And he wants to, just like everybody else, he wants to find a way to get these Easter eggs, but he is not rich, so he has to kind of do it very, very slowly until he finally wins. He finds the first one. This is a spoiler if you haven't seen it. He gets the first Easter egg, and then that finally gets him going, gets him the money he needs to continue on. And I think it was a great idea. Spielberg directing this movie was perfect, because Spielberg's movies are nostalgia to us these days. His movies they weren't based in nostalgia, but they have become that because he's so legendary. So to have a legendary director like him tackle this, I think was perfect. And he's so steeped into culture that he knows what's popular. He knew what needed to be added in there. They have, for horror fans, they have Chucky, they have Jason, they have all these characters that come to life. As Wayne said, they have Back to the Future, the car. They have Transformers and like Godzilla and all. Just there's so many characters to mention here. It's just kind of, you watch it and your brain can hardly. That's why it's what you're saying, Wayne. I get it. It's so hard to talk about it in kind of like the linear fashion because there's so many things being thrown at you as you're watching this movie. It's really cool. It's a really good movie. Solid performances from everybody in this movie. I really liked Olivia Cook as Artemis, which is like kind of the love interest, but she's really good in this. Ben Mendelsohn always plays a good villain. Like, he's Australian, he's foreign. They usually play good villains. He does great here. Simon Pegg as the friend, the Wozniak to Mark Rylance's Steve Jobs, a.k.a. James Holliday, also known as Anorak the All-Knowing, who is like the mentor inside this video game universe it's created. So what it is he creates this video game universe based on his growing up. So everything's from the 80s and the 90s. That's kind of the whole idea. In the book, it's mostly from the 80s. In this movie, because this movie takes place in our future where we've had the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, they throw in Halo, they throw in like Twisted Metal, they throw in all this stuff that we would know into this movie, just one movie. There's supposed to be more coming out. I know the sequel book, I think, is just coming out soon. So it's very entertaining. It's a great story. It kind of encapsulates everything about culture and nostalgia in one movie, and it does such a really good job. And Spielberg, it's probably one of his more entertaining movies in a while, because he's done a lot of, obviously, dramas and stuff. I won't say one of his better ones, because some of his other dramas recently have been really freaking fantastic.
Right.
But it's kind of him getting back to the entertaining filmmaking, which we all expected with Indiana Jones 4, and we all know how that turned out. So this was kind of like a welcome return to him making a very entertaining film.
Yeah. The best part about it is you don't have to be a video game aficionado to understand and get this movie. I mean, it obviously helps if you have some knowledge, but overall, It's entertaining nonetheless.
Very true. Some other movies, though, that also talk... I'm just going to run through the list here, and then we'll get on with the rest of this show. But Ready Player One, if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's fantastic. Can't go wrong. You probably rent or buy it now. It's not streaming on anything. It was on HBO, I think, for a while. But start 1982, right. Tron. Tron was based on a video... not based on a video game, but Tron was based in a video game world. The guy playing an arcade game ends up in the arcade game that he created. Very cool, very stylish movie. I enjoyed the sequel, which came out years later.
Very much so. The Tron Legacy was outstanding.
I like Tron Legacy. I think it doesn't get the respect it deserves. Hopefully the third one will show that all three movies belong. War Games, another 80s movie, deals with video games. Versus Matthew Broderick versus a computer. Who's trying to blow up the world, basically. Cloak and Dagger.
And one of my favorite ones that we're going to talk about, I'm sure.
Which one?
The 1989 film, The Wizard.
The Wizard. That was actually going to be my next one I was going to. The Wizard.
Great minds.
Yep. The Wizard, starring Fred Savage, came out in 1989. A boy with mental problems decides to run away to compete in a video game contest, and his brother helps him hitchhike to the tournament. Features numerous NES video games, primarily Super Mario Bros. 3 before its American release. That's one of the reasons this movie was huge, because Mario Brothers friends were like, there's a new Mario game coming out? Oh my god. And it's one of the best Mario games.
To advertise. They basically made a movie to advertise a video game coming out. Genius. Also featured the Power Glove, one of the most ratchet, bogus video game add-ons you ever could own.
Yes.
I ended up buying a Power Glove for $15 at Toys R Us on clearance. Just oh, hey, it'd be cool to have just with my Nintendo stuff. Did not work. And it's not like this was broken. It was just a janky product.
It wasn't good.
Schoolboy, no good.
Yeah. Didn't work out very well, but the movie was fun. They just released a Shout Factory special edition Blu-ray of it. I do want to get that at some point. But yeah, really fun movie. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I'm not going to, unless you want to talk more on it, Wayne, I'm not going to mention anything too much on it.
No, it features Sam McMurray and Christian Slater, and Beau Bridges is the father.
Yeah.
It's good.
Another one I really liked, 2009 Gerard Butler Gamer. It's basically,
I am not familiar.
Okay, so it's basically Running Man, but in a video game form. Logan Lerman plays a young kid who's playing online virtual video games, and they end up making this Logan Run/Running Man type of game where these actual prisoners have to fight each other for their lives, but the people controlling them are the video gamers. So Logan Lerman is controlling Gerard Butler's character, and then you kind of find out that Gerard Butler was screwed over, he's not supposed to be there. It has Dexter as the villain. He's the video game master, the one running the show. It's really cool. It got really terrible reviews when it came out. I really liked it. I dug it. It's directed by Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor, who did the Crank movies, which are just crazy.
Yes.
So it's as crazy as that. I do recommend it for people who just love crazy action films. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World we talked about last week. It's a comic book movie, but it also is based in a video game style world where he has bad guys he has to fight, and they treat it as such. Those are the villains, the baddies that he has to fight. Tron Legacy we mentioned. The other ones I'll mention, Wreck-It Ralph, fantastic. If you haven't seen him, really good. Pixels, Pixels was okay. It was cool to see. It was like a good precursor to Ready Player One. It's Pixels gives you what you think Hollywood's going to give you, which is kind of a mediocre video game Renaissance movie. And then Ready Player One stepped it up and was this is what you really deserve. This is the nostalgia you deserve, not just a giant alien Pac-Man, which Whatever. It was cool, whatever. Adam Sandler, fine, bad movie. But the Jumanji movies, the most recent ones, those are based in a video game world because instead of a board game, they're a video game now. And I think that was a cool kind of update to those, to this franchise. And these movies, I think, are done very well. They're very entertaining, and they're a lot of fun. And it just shows that you can have movies that aren't actually based on current video games or old video games, but about video games, and the majority of them turn out to actually be better than the video game adaptations. And I think that's interesting, and that's going to lead us into our review of the week, which I feel bad because I choose the reviews of the week, and I chose a movie, and the movie is called Doom Annihilation. And it is a straight-to VOD movie. I think what happened, Wayne, here was I read one good review last year, and I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I want to see that. They put it on. It came out in October last year on DVD. They put it on Netflix not soon after. It's directed by Tony Giglio, written by him as well. It stars Amy Manson, Dominic Martham, Luke Allen Gale, Nina Bergman. If you haven't heard of any of those names, don't be upset yourself, because neither have I. The only person I recognized in this movie was Louis Mandelar, and he was the brother in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and he's really good in those movies, so watch those movies. Doom Annihilation is based on the Doom video game, and
in name only.
So in 2013, I believe, is when I read on Wikipedia, the director Tony, we'll just call him Tony, it's a lot easier to say than his last name, went to Universal with an idea. They turned him down. Then the Doom video game came out, the newest one in 2016, before the sequel that just came out this year, and it was loved again. People love the game. I love the game. It was fantastic. So then they greenlit his movie, and you would have thought, like, oh, that must mean they saw some cool Doom stuff in it. It starts off with these scientists trying to go back from Earth to Mars through a teleporter, and things go wrong, and then you send in your Marines, which are the main characters in the Doom video games. They gender swap the lead role. It's a woman this time, which I don't have a problem with at all. It was fine.
It triggered a lot of people, though.
I'm sure it did. And Wayne and I are not those type of people. Stuff like that doesn't trigger us. What triggers us more is that the movie wasn't very good. Like, if you're gonna do anything, I don't care. Just make the movie good. They do some things well. So the Marines show up, and like things go bad. And Wayne, you had talked about beforehand a good comparison to this movie. What was your comparison? And I'll tell you if we're on the same page.
This felt like the first Resident Evil movie going into the mansion.
Okay, yeah.
Crossed with Starship Troopers, but both. I'm going to just use a half-ass, John, because it didn't do as well as either of those two movies that I mentioned. Because I really like Starship Troopers, the 1996 film.
Love it.
And I very, very, very much love all of the Resident Evil movies, but especially the first one.
Yes. Combining
these two and not really taking enough from either, it's I don't know. I don't care from the beginning because there isn't enough character development. The plot feels rushed. You don't really know what the hell is going on. And maybe that's because I'm not a huge fan of the video game, but still, you got to give me some kind of setup. So people start dying right away. You don't really need to. It's not a spoiler because you don't know who the hell they are when they die. So
no, you don't. Yeah, and
shame on me.
Yeah, there's no character development at all. The movie I thought of, and that's actually two good comparisons, because Starship Troopers I did think of a little bit, but Starship Troopers was more tongue in cheek, and this one didn't. This one probably should have been, but it wasn't. So that was the problem. I felt like what they were like. The director was like, "Hey, you know what was a good movie? Aliens. Let me just make Aliens, but call it Doom Annihilation, and we'll just call it a day." Because you have the characters all match up. You have your Ripley character. You have your Hudson, which is the Bill Paxton character. You have your other characters that are just the girl with the short hair is like Vasquez from Aliens. It was, to me, it was such a copy. And Hudson from Aliens is great. Bill Paxton is fantastic. The Australian guy in this movie was basically him. He just would walk around and say stupid one-liners or be scared, like Hudson. And you're just like, oh, God. And I watch Aliens a lot because my wife loves that movie. So we watch it constantly. And I'm kind of sick of it. I was still watching this movie. I was like, I'd rather be watching Aliens again because this was not good.
Let's be honest, though. Sigourney Weaver and Jake Busey could not save a Doom Annihilation.
No, they couldn't.
So I took characters from Aliens and from Starship Troopers, two of my favorites, throwing it in there. And
they couldn't save it. You're right. The one thing this movie had going for it was the weapons. They show a lot of the cool weapons that are used in Doom. They obviously get to the BFG gun towards the end of the movie, which she does use, which was cool. The special effects are not great. The practical effects were really good, I thought. That was kind of one of the bright spots. But then when you saw the special effects, you're like, wow, those are really cheesy. And it was a made for home video movie, so that's not surprising. Overall, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this movie because it's not very good, and it's not very entertaining, and it's not really worth your time. If you want to watch it, it's on Netflix. I don't know, 1.5 out of 5 is probably how I would rate it. Is there anything else you want to say about this movie, Wayne?
The ending really pissed me off, and I'm not going to say anything about it because I just don't believe in spoilers, but just... come on.
You know what? I actually, that was one thing I wanted to talk about. It was one of those movies, and I felt this way about The Joker too, and I'm not going to spoil any of those movies, but the ending of the movie, I thought, was actually a better setup for an entire movie than the rest of the movie, but then the movie just ends.
Yes, exactly.
The ending of I almost want a sequel because with the same cast, because I think a sequel was actually set up that would have been much better than this original movie. But I also don't want a sequel because they'll probably just screw it up anyway. But that was a good point because that was one thing I took away. I was like, oh, this would have been a great setup at the beginning of the movie. Have her whole team die and then she, whatever, that spoiler. It just,
Oh, darn.
Oh, darn. I spoiled this movie. No one's going to watch it. It's a mistake on my part for picking it, but I wanted to try to keep intact with the last couple of weeks we've been picking movies that fit into our theme or picking our theme based on the movies we review. I wanted to talk video game movies this week, so this was perfect because we hadn't seen it yet. Unfortunately, it just wasn't good.
There were quite a few people that gave this 4 and even 5-star reviews on Google and even some on IMDb, and I just had to stop and go, did you work on this film? Were you doing something? Did you know an actor that was in it?
Because even as
I don't want to be like that, but someone needs to sit down and explain to me how they were able to give it 4 stars.
Even as a trashy B movie, it wasn't enjoyable. It was I've seen trashy B movies that are fun. To me, it just was not enjoyable. And no, I wasn't expecting much. I read it. The reviews I read that were good said it was a trashy B movie done right. So I was expecting a trashy B movie done right, and I was disappointed. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to move on into the more somber part of our show. But maybe it's the happier part of our show after talking about that movie that wasn't very good. We're going to talk about 2 actors who, unfortunately, were in video game movies, but had other movies that were great that kind of set them apart from being in their crappy video game movies. First, we'll start off this week. Ben Cross passed away, the star of Chariots of Fire, and he played Spock's dad in the new Star Trek movies with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto. Rest in peace to him. He was 72, he did a short illness and passed away. Let's get on to our main guys we're going to talk about, though. We're going to talk about Bob Hoskins and Raul Julia. Now, we'll start with Bob Hoskins. He had the longer career. Bob Hoskins is a great actor, legendary British actor, is known for Roger Rabbit. That's probably where most of us know him from. That's what I grew up with him on. Obviously, he was in, unfortunately, Mario Brothers. But we like not to talk about that movie when we talk about Bob. We like to talk about Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he was fantastic. It's probably one of my favorite childhood movies that I can remember. He passed away in 2014 at the age of 71. He had Parkinson's. It's unfortunate. But yeah, he's an actor that when he passed, it wasn't it didn't hit me hard because he was older. but it made me think about his career a little bit. Think about the movies that I really enjoyed him in. And a lot of things that I still honestly haven't seen, because as a movie buff, I'm constantly watching new and old movies, but I don't always pick out the movies that I've been wanting to see. Like The Long Good Friday, I haven't seen, and he's supposed to be fantastic in it. But really, like I said, to American audiences, he really hit with Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That was probably his biggest American role to date at that point. And that kind of thrust him into movies here. He was in Heart Condition with Denzel Washington, which was an interesting movie. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that. I liked it. It's a fun kind of body switch comedy. Mermaids. Hook. Hook is another one. Hook is a movie that we've talked about previously, directed by Steven Spielberg. He plays Shmi, and he was really good in this role, and he was really fun. Another kids movie that he kind of... Why his presence was so big to us when we were young is he was in a lot of these kid-type movies. And just looking at some of the stuff that he did when he got older, too. I mean, he was in Nixon, Spice World.
Yes, everyone himself in Spice World.
Everyone was great in Spice World. He was unfortunately in Son of the Mask. Another movie I want to talk about, Unleashed, that he was in. That was a 2005 movie with Jet Li, Morgan Freeman, and Bob Hoskins. Bob Hoskins played the very British villain. He did a really good job in this role, and it just showed his range, that he was able to play these mean characters. I mean, he plays a mean character in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but I want to say in like Hook, he plays... kind of a lovable bad guy in Hook. So you kind of, in Hook, you see more a lovable side to Bob Hoskins. And I think that, Unleashed was it was Luc Besson produced, directed by Louis Leterrier. But it's a good movie. It's a really good, kind of fighting crime movie, if you haven't seen it.
One of my favorite movies that he was in was the 1996 film Michael, starring John Travolta,
yes,
William Hurt, Andy McDowell, obviously Bob Hoskins, Robert Pastorelli, where John Travolta plays the Archangel Michael, who's come down to Earth for a getaway, a vacation as he calls it, and this is unfortunately his last trip to Earth, so he's trying to live it up, and it's I guess you'd call it a rom-com.
It is, yeah,
because there's some romance between Andy McDowell and William Hurt character, and yeah, it's very interesting. It's got a lot of good comedic moments, especially where John Travolta battles the bull. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch this movie. It's a good hour. It's a good way to spend an hour and a half of your time. Plus, the pie song is just adorbs.
Yes, it's a sweet movie. I actually didn't mind that movie. That was like when Travolta was trying to figure out who he was going to be again. Another one of his I don't know if I'm going to be this kind of actor or that kind of actor.
And Bob Hoskins is not in this movie very often, but he is the evil head of the journalism department in Chicago, of all places.
Yes.
Their office is located in the Sears Tower. That's right, not the Willis Tower, the Sears Tower. Get it right.
The Bruce Willis Towers. That's what I like to call it. So next, we'll talk about Raul Julia. These were two.
Okay, that is acceptable.
We'll talk about Raul Julia next. His biggest thing, obviously, I think, again, and it goes back to our childhood, and that's the two Addams Family movies. Now, Raul Julia is another actor who I have not gone and visited all his work. But when he did Addams Family, and Addams Family Values for that matter, which I sit here and tell you that Addams Family Values is just as good as the Addams Family. And if you want to argue with that, you can come on the show and we will fight about it. But they are both fantastic. He was great as Gomez Addams. This one, it was a little more, when he passed away, it was a little more sad for me because I had just fallen in love with those movies, the Addams Family movies, and he passed in 1994, and those movies were like 91 to 93 or something like that. And it was just sad. I remember thinking, crap, man, we're never going to get another Addams Family movie with him. We unfortunately got another Addams Family movie with Tim Curry, who I love, but there's no Gomez Addams.
Correct me if I'm wrong. He died during the production of Street Fighter, right?
He died right. He finished filming it, and then he had a heart attack and died right after. And and it sucks because that's what people remember. Oh yeah, didn't he die during Street Fighter or right after Street Fighter? And it's yeah, but he was an accomplished actor way before that. In all honesty, Street Fighter, the only good thing about Street Fighter is him as M. Bison. His one-liners and his puns, and he's hilarious, and I think he knew what kind of movie he was in. Nobody else did. Everyone else took it very seriously. He did not. And him being the serious actor that he was, it was kind of funny that he was the one that didn't take it seriously. And he hammed it up awesomely. And he is, honestly, Street Fighter is worth seeing just because of him. And
do you think Street Fighter would have been better if Jean-Claude had the mullet?
I think Street Fighter...
I think so.
It would have been better if they cast someone who was an American to play the American U.S. soldier named Guile. I think that would have been better than Jean-Claude Van Damme, a man who obviously can't do an American accent. It was so ridiculous in that movie and how they tried to make him like this American hero. And his Belgian French accent is hard to hide. So silly. But I digress. Raul Julia, to me, was an actor, from what I've seen him in, he seemed to love the craft. He enjoyed making movies, and I think that comes through in the Addams Family movies. As a young fan of, I like horror movies. I like gory horror movies. Wayne knows this. I like anything horror related. I love children horror films, and the Addams Family is a children horror comedy, and it was perfect for someone like me growing up in the 90s. I kind of felt like, as a horror fan, I almost felt like an outcast at a certain point because I didn't look like how a lot of people thought horror fans should look. So movies like Addams Family were kind of like a gateway to me, and he was part of that. He was a huge part of making me kind of seek out those weirder movies because they're a weird family. But they're a family, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, they're bizarre, but they're a family, and that's how those movies portray them. Like, they're together and they love each other, and they're just so weird and bizarre and crazy that it's so awesome. And that's why
Let's not forget creepy and kooky as well.
Yes, exactly. I mean, how could you go wrong with having Christopher Lloyd play Fester? I mean, it's fantastic. He was great. Obviously, Angelica Houston and Christina Ricci, fantastic. So just a great two movies that we got. And it was, for me, again, it was sad when he passed because those movies were so big to me, and I hold those movies so dear.
When you go back to the mid-'60s Addams Family TV show with Gomez being played by John Astin, and then you just compare Raul Julia's adaptation to Mr. Astin's, it's really, like, they're very similar. And not to say that Raul Julia did not make Gomez his own, because he really did with just his mannerisms and his charisma, but it played proper respect to the original character. One of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody portrays a character that's already well known, like the Joker. I'm just going to use the Joker character, and completely tries to take it into a different direction. Mm-hmm. And if it works, then they're successful. Hey, congratulations to you. But when you take something and go into left field and it just doesn't work at all, it really bothers me. Suicide Squad's Joker, Jared Leto, looking at your direction right now, bro. It didn't work, man. And like I said before, when we talk about the Joker, I think that's just a character that needs to be retired for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And just nobody do anything with it, because it's just, well, I'm just going to go on another little 30-second tangent. Batman in and of itself needs to go away for a while. I'm done. I'm tired of it. No mas. I hope that the Batman is going to be amazing.
Well, we'll talk about that more later. Yeah.
So, all right, but I'm Batman out. So.
A lot of people are Spider-Man out too. No, I get it. Oversaturation is tough sometimes. What I do want to point out too is while Julia died in 1994, John Astin, who played Gomez Addams in the 1960s, is still alive. So
it is.
He's still kicking. Sean Astin's father. So if anyone knows who Sean Astin is.
Rudy.
Really? That's what you go with? Sam.
I can't carry the ring, Mr. Frodo, but yes. I can carry you. Come on. Bob Newby, superhero. Enough said.
Yes, that's true. He was great in that. But again, Bob Hoskins, Raul Julia, two great legendary actors taken before their time. To them we say, we hope you're resting in peace and you are missed. And as film fans, we constantly think of actors that we have lost, and those are two greats that are hard to replace. So
absolutely.
All right. So moving on to our next segment, we're going to go into what we've been watching this week. I'm going to talk about a few things that I've seen that I enjoyed. And first off, I'll just say I've been rewatching Supernatural. Or not rewatching. I've been catching up on Supernatural. And I love that show. And I'm really excited to finish it so that I can finish the series, which ends soon. Because they're finally going back to filming those. The first one I'm going to talk about is The King of Staten Island. This is a movie I think I talked about like on our first podcast. Because that's about when it came out. I wanted to rent it. I hadn't seen it. I didn't want to pay the $20 rental fee. I'm not, working right now, obviously, so it's not feasible. But it came out to purchase, and it was only $15. It's well worth the price. Pete Davidson plays an exaggerated version, maybe not exaggerated version, but plays. It's pretty much who he is. A version of himself as Scott, who is named after his dad, who passed away. He was murdered. During 9/11, and that's very sad. They don't touch on that in this movie. They make his dad die in a house fire or something, so they don't have to go and kind of have everyone relive 9/11 because, as we all know, that's very depressing and very sad. And I'm sure it was for him. But it's a way for him and Judd Apatow, who directed the movie and co-wrote it with Pete, to tell his story and to tell how a kind of goofy kid growing up without a father, how that sent him into depression. He had ADD, he has ADD, so that was an issue. Crohn's disease is another issue that he has. So all the things that he had to deal with, plus on the top of not having a father, you kind of start to understand him a little more. And I think this movie, while it's very funny, is also a very good drama, and it's a very good portrait of a man kind of lost in the world trying to find his way. And I think everybody involved did a really good job. Pete, I'm not going to say Pete should win an Oscar or anything. He basically plays himself, which is obviously very easy for him to do. But he gives a very nuanced performance. He's very down-to-earth kind of in certain times where, when you see him in public, you don't necessarily think of a down-to-earth guy, but he is. And in this movie, you kind of get to see that. You get to see what he went through mentally, though, and depression is hell, from what I understand, and they portray that pretty obviously that's what he's going through, and he's just trying to find his way. In real life, he found comedy, and that helped him. And this movie, his character wants to be a tattoo artist, so they're kind of switched out what he wanted to do. But it's a really good movie. It was very well done. I highly recommend it if you're a fan of Apatow movies because he continues to just deliver hit after hit. Another one I watched is a South Korean movie. It's called The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil. It's a really good movie. It's about a serial killer who is randomly targeting people and murdering them. Well, one day he decides to rear-end a gangster and try to kill the gangster as one of his victims. Well, the gangster obviously, being able to fight back, fights him off, gets stabbed and stuff, but his credibility is shot. So the gangster is really upset because there's an attempt made on his life. They attack the rival gang first, but then they realize it wasn't him. So then he has to kind of get his respect back. So he decides to work with the cop who thinks it's a serial killer, where everybody else doesn't, because they're all very random killings. It's not very specific like you would for a serial killer. And so him and the cop work together to hunt down the serial killer, and it's really just a cool stylistic movie. Lots of chase scenes. Really good acting. I mention it mainly because the main actor, who goes by Don Lee, but he has two names. His other name is Dong Seok Ma, but Don Lee, I guess everyone felt was easier to pronounce, so he goes by that. He's in Train to Busan, which, Wayne, you said you were watching, and
I'm currently watching.
He's one of my favorite parts of that movie. He's the guy. He's the badass. He's the one that the heavier set guy in the beginning of the movie. I don't know if you remember, but he's awesome, and he is going to be in the Eternals next year, the Marvel movie. So he's one of the Eternals. So he's kind of making his way to kind of be known by Hollywood and America. And they are apparently, Stallone wants to remake The Gangster, the Cop, and the Devil with him as the star as the gangster still. So Stallone would then, I believe, play the cop, and Don Lee would play his role of the gangster. I know, but
I'm your worst nightmare.
Basically, it's a Cobra remake. Yeah, so that one's really good. I really recommend it. There's this new app where you can watch a bunch of Asian films called Haya. It's like $3 a month. They do a 30-day free trial, which I think is really cool. I didn't know that before I watched this movie, so I rented it. But it's free on Haya, and like I said, that's only $3 a month. There's lots of cool stuff on there. I also watched Unstoppable, which is a movie he stars in. It's like a Taken. They steal his wife, and he goes crazy. He wants to get her back, and he's like this. In that one, he's a retired gangster, but it was known his nickname. You find out his nickname was the Bull. So it's kind of like anytime someone hits him, like nothing happens. He's just like, and then he throws people against walls, into cabinets. Like, it's really awesome. It's a really good movie. Just a straight up revenge kind of story. I really like that one a lot. Then just recently I watched 1BR, which stands for one bedroom. Like if you're looking for an apartment. I just watched it today. It's a really good horror flick. Indie horror flick. I don't want to give too much of it away. It's pretty intense. It's only an hour and a half, so it goes by real quick. I really recommend it. It hit Netflix, I think, today, and we went to Netflix. We're like, oh, I wanted to see this, so we watched it. Really good. Recommend that one. Wayne, why don't you talk about what you want to talk about today?
All right. To start off my week, I was eagerly waiting the drop of Lucifer Season 5 on Netflix. It is the first half of Season 5, 8 episodes. They do not disappoint. Fantastic. Without giving anything away, I believe it's the 4th or 5th episode, they do a throwback to the 1940s gangster era. And it is just masterfully done, where everybody plays a different character altogether. If you're not familiar with Lucifer, Tom Ellis plays the devil, Samael, Beelzebub, whatever name you know him by, who is walking amongst us in Los Angeles. He's a nightclub owner by the name of Lux, and just all sorts of debauchery takes place. And he ends up working with the LAPD, Detective Chloe Decker. It's got crime, it's got drama, and it's got comedy. It's fantastic. It started out on Fox for the first 3 seasons, was canceled, and then picked up by Netflix, who is just taking the baton and running with it. Season 5 just dropped. The second half of Season 5 is coming relatively soon, but Tom Ellis is just fantastic, playing more than one role in this season. And I don't want to say too much else about it because it is just fantastic, and I'd hate myself if I spelled it for you.
Yes, I know. I'll be watching it probably this week. Because I started Supernatural again, I haven't had the time yet to watch it. Rebecca doesn't watch it with me, so I'll get to that. I know it's 8 episodes, so I'll get that one done pretty quickly.
Because it was video game week for us, I started watching this documentary on Netflix called High Score. And this is a 6-part documentary that traces the history of classic video games, featuring the insight from the innovators who brought these worlds and characters to life. Very in-depth. We're talking like the gentleman that came up with the idea for Space Invaders, which revolutionized the video game, the arcade over here, along with Pac-Man and Donkey Kong. Just crazy to see how an idea just sprung into this new direction of entertainment. So if you're really into video games and you're looking to figure out, learn a little bit more about them, check out High Score on Netflix. We are finishing off The Big Bang Theory on HBO Max, so Miranda and I have started watching That 70s Show. Sure, most people are familiar. From 1998 to 2006, 2007, the show ran as life was portrayed at Point Place, Wisconsin, in the mid to late 70s. Yeah, it's just got a ton of just nostalgia for people that were alive then. You gave us Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. Yep. Laura Prepon has started here, went on to successful run in Orange is the New Black. Danny Masterson, kind of a controversial person at this point.
Yeah, we don't talk.
I don't even want to talk about him, but he's in it. Obviously, the main character, Eric Foreman, and I've completely forgotten the actor's name. Kirky, help me out here.
Topher Grace.
Topher Grace, thank you. Known from the fantastic smash hit Spider-Man 3, but honestly, my favorite character on the show, Red Foreman. He was the bad guy in RoboCop.
Yes, he was.
He's got some of the best one-liners. It's our new going to sleep show. So
nice.
Yeah, that's what I've been watching.
So recommendations this week. I recommend going to Netflix, choosing a TV show like Lucifer. Warrior Nun is something I finished recently. Supernatural, if you haven't gotten into Supernatural, you like shows like Lucifer, it's 15 seasons, but it's well worth it. It's a hell of a show. I definitely recommend it. Never Have I Ever is another good one on Netflix. I recommend that one. Just there's lots of good TV shows to binge. Ozark, which we talked about before, definitely watch that. And yeah.
I am on the last episode, or the last season of Ozark, or the current season of Ozark right now. It's really, really good.
Yeah, we'll go into that. When you're done, we'll go into that with as little spoilers as possible, but we'll talk about that one in a little more expanded. But yeah, there's just so much stuff to catch on Netflix. If you don't have Netflix, what are you doing? Watch Stranger Things. There you go. Best show on Netflix, in my opinion. So we're going to move on to the news and notes section, and give me a second here.
Well, he's looking for that, guys. If you're also looking for something fun and artistic, and it's a movie that'll really make you think, Prime Video has Big Fish as a selection on there right now. The 2003 film with Ewan McGregor, Albert Finney, Billy Crudup, Jessica Lange, Helena Bonham Carter, Alison Lohman. I could go on and on. It's a fantastic movie. It's one of the first art films that I really made me stop and think.
Probably Tim Burton's last great movie too.
Indeed,
really
definitely.
Good.
If you're looking for something, check that out.
Yeah, real good movie. I agree with Wayne on that one. Also, again, as we talked about before, IMDb, Vudu, Tubi, Pluto, all that stuff's free. Get an account, go sign up, watch it. There's a bunch of stuff on there. Lots of great movies, lots of great TV shows, old stuff. It's all free. Check it out. All right, so I'm going to start with movie releases this week because we're going to talk about something extended in the news portion. So movie releases coming out in the future. You got Enola Holmes with Millie Bobby Brown, Henry Cavill, Sam Claflin, and Helena Bonham Carter coming out September 23rd. It's a movie about Sherlock Holmes' sister. Millie Bobby Brown, obviously the star of Stranger Things. She's in that one. Supernatural final season resumes in October, ends in November. Like I said, I'm catching up. If you haven't, catch up now. Great show. The Secrets We Keep, September 16th in theaters, then VOD a month later starring Noomi Rapace. Bad Hair is a horror film that hits Hulu October 23rd from director of Dear White People and the creator of the same TV show on Netflix. The Binge, August 28th with Vince Vaughn, hits Hulu. Hubie Halloween, Adam Sandler Halloween movie, comes out in October. All his friends are along for the ride. And, of course, it is going to be on Netflix. Unsolved Mysteries Part 2, October. Wayne and I talked about Part 1. Part 1 was awesome. Part 2 is going to be awesome. Take our word for it. The Gloria, starring Julianne Moore, Alicia Vikander, will be going to Amazon Prime in September. On the Rocks with Bill Murray and Rashida Jones, directed by Sofia Coppola, will be in theaters and Apple TV in October. TV series I'm excited about, the Wright stuff, about the space movie from years ago that they made a movie of it. There's a TV show coming to Disney Plus October 9th. I really am looking forward to that. All right, so the news portion. I talked about Supernatural. Well, here's some exciting news for me. Eric Kripke, who created Supernatural, also created the TV show The Boys. They've already been renewed for a third season, even though season 2 hasn't dropped yet. Jensen Ackles, who plays Dean, the one of the main characters on Supernatural, has been cast as Soldier Boy in The Boys Season 3, so I'm very excited about that. This movie right here I'm going to mention may cause some uproar. I'm going to say it has potential. Planes, Trains, Automobiles remake with Will Smith and Kevin Hart. You probably couldn't cast two more famous people. So that, I think...
Whoa. Kevin Hart's doing a movie without Dwayne Johnson?
Yes, they replaced him with... They replaced him with Will Smith in this one. So Will Smith will be playing the part of Dwayne Johnson.
I demand he say welcome to Earth.
He might, maybe at one point. I assume just based on their personalities, Will Smith will be the Steve Martin character. Kevin Hart will be the John Candy character, I imagine. Exorcist reboot in the works. Don't know how people feel about that. First one's great. Reboots kind of hit and miss.
The original scared the ever-living crap out of me, so I'm going to pass.
Rachel...
I'm just going to go to pray in the corner. Don't mind me.
Rachel Weisz to star in Dead Ringers TV show for Amazon. Dead Ringers is a David Cronenberg film starring Jeremy Irons, where there are two Jeremy Irons, and they're both equally crazy. I'm looking forward to that because I like that movie a lot, and I think Rachel Weisz playing that part is going to be kind of nuts, so I'm really excited. Big news in the Marvel world. Olivia Wilde is directing a female Marvel movie for Sony, so it'll be part of the MCU, kind of, but mainly in the Spider-Man part of that universe, since it's Sony made. So it's Spider-Woman, I think, is going to be a main character in that. I love Olivia Wilde. I thought Booksmart was great as her directorial debut. I'm excited for her to have this opportunity. Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton will both be returning as Batman in the new Flash movie. That was just announced earlier this week. That'll kind of segue into the later portion here. But first I'm going to talk about Shudder. 61 Days of Halloween starts September 1st. They're going to be playing new movies, new TV shows for the next 2 months, from September through October. If you have Shudder, you should be excited about this. I'm excited about this. Joe Bob's got a new special. Bunch of TV shows and movies I've been waiting to see will be hitting Shudder within this span. Kraven the Hunter, another Sony Marvel movie, possibly directed by J.C. Shandor. That's on its way. So the next thing I wanted to save some time here at the end of the show for was they had DC Fandom this weekend, and it brought a lot of new trailers. There was the Wonder Woman 2 final trailer, which I thought looked pretty good. We got to see Cheetah, actually. I thought that looked cool. What did you think of that trailer, Wayne?
I think it looks fantastic. I cannot wait. Wonder Woman was such a delight when it came out. I cannot wait to see what 1984 looks like.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. To keep in our style with the video games, 2 video games were announced from DC. The first one I want to talk about is Gotham Knights, which is a sequel to the Arkham Knight series. In this, you find out in the trailer Bruce Wayne has died. And
Allegedly.
Batgirl and Red Hood and Nightwing and Robin all have to take up the mantle. It looks like a cool idea for a video game. I'm excited for that one. The other one, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, which looks like a fun video game where you get to play as the Suicide Squad against Superman and the Justice League, because that happens sometimes in the comics. I know that superheroes do go crazy.
I am not okay with trying to fight Superman.
The trailer was pretty funny, though. I'll give them credit for that. I really thought
it looks like it's going to be a phenomenal game, but just
yeah.
As a Superman fan, I don't like it.
No, I know. I hear you. That leads us into our first look at the new Suicide Squad movie from James Gunn. They released a BTS trailer, behind-the-scenes trailer, where we get to see Gunn and the actors talk about being in the movie, when they show us clips and stuff, which was really cool to see. Huge cast in that one. I think they're going to kill off a bunch of the Suicide Squad members to start, because there's so many people in it. But it looks like it. James Gunn did the Guardians movie. I love those movies. I'm a huge James Gunn fan, so I'm excited for this movie. We finally get to see who Idris Elba is playing, who he's the next big star next to Margot Robbie, who's playing, obviously, Harley Quinn. He'll be playing Bloodsport, and then you also have John Cena playing Peacekeeper, which is basically, as they described, the douchey Captain America in the trailer, which I thought was funny. And basically, he's Captain America, but if Captain America believed in shooting people in the face because they were bad. And we get a cool...
So you're trying to tell me that he's a Donald Trump?
Yes, probably. So you you get to see, too, a cool character announcement trailer that lists all the characters. Pete Davidson's in that one as well, which is interesting to me just because it's him and he's weird. But we'll see how...
James Gunn says that this is the biggest movie he's ever done, coming off the Guardians films, is kind of mind-blowing for me. So
yes,
I'm eagerly anticipating that, especially since Suicide Squad kind of let me down.
Yes, for sure.
I think we can agree that it did not live up to the hype.
Before we get to the big thing to talk about, I will mention, too, new Flash costume. They dropped that Black Adam logo reveal trailer where they had The Rock animated and a bunch of cool stuff going on. That's not been shooting yet, so once they get shooting on that, we'll get some more stuff on that.
And interesting that the movie's going to, it's just about a supervillain.
Yeah, I thought that was really, and they already talked about there will be heroes that he'll be fighting. So, who are we rooting for in that movie? And it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. And then you're going to have you're going to have Shazam 2, which is called Shazam Fury of the Gods, coming out in 2022, the end of 2022. I'm excited about that because I like the first Shazam. I'm not familiar with this character. Static Shock movie in development, so that's another thing they announced. I don't know who that is, but he's a character. All right.
Like a B horror film.
Yeah, right, exactly. They also released the Snyder Cut trailer. I was disappointed, as I expected to be.
Yeah.
No sound effects, just Hallelujah playing for 4 minutes. And the announcement, it's going to be a 4-hour TV series now. I'm like, whatever, man. I'll watch it. I'm not excited about it. Darkseid looked terrible. There's no, like, you know...
Wait, Darkseid was in it? I didn't notice him at all.
He's in the very beginning. He looks, as people said, he looks like an N64 villain. Yeah.
Well, we all know how good Superman N64 was.
Yes, exactly. I think that
one of the worst video games ever made.
That was the joke I think they were pulling out there, yeah. Because someone actually doctored up a photo of the N64 game with him on the cover, with Darkseid on the cover. And I was like, oh, God. And, again, you know, hate or love Justice League, he took all the color out of the movie. And the end shot, you can't even tell who's who. It's so dark. I'm like, dude, really? Like, I don't get it. Like, so that leads us into the Batman. They released a surprise teaser for the Batman, which we didn't. They're still filming, so no one thought this was coming. It looks cool, and I know people were. I know you just said you want Batman to be put on hold. I don't think that's going to happen because I think this movie's going to be successful. I think people are going to like Robert Pattinson in it, and I think we're probably going to get another Batman trilogy. So, which means, unfortunately, we're probably getting another Joker within the next 5-6 years.
Do you think Batman sparkles like diamonds in the sunlight?
No, I don't think he does. I think Pattinson has the perfect look for Bruce Wayne. I liked his voice, the Batman voice he used in the trailer. I think this one was dark on purpose because they're not done with it. Like, this one, obviously it'll be a dark movie, but I think they were overly dark because the CGI and the effects and everybody isn't done yet. So they wanted to make sure that kind of stayed hidden. The big surprise here was Colin Farrell, very unrecognizable as the Penguin. Some people may not even realize he was in the trailer, but as they're driving in the car, they cut to him, and he's like, man, this guy's crazy. It's totally Colin Farrell's voice, but he looks, they've showed pictures of him since the trailers come out. He looks nothing like himself. Lots of makeup, lots of prosthetics. So I'm interested.
I thought it was going to be the Riddler because of the weird riddles and whatnot.
The Riddler is the main villain. That's played.
Okay.
He's played by, I don't know why names are escaping me right now.
Because we're old?
Yeah, I guess. Hold on. We're almost done, folks, I promise. Paul,
I am not excited for this at all. So while he looks up the name, I just want to give my 2 cents. Like, I'm just Batman out. Bruce Wayne is part of the problem, being the 1%. I'm going totally political satire here, so don't really take it seriously. But I am just Batman out.
Paul Dano plays the Riddler. He is the main villain. He's the one setting all the traps. But it includes Penguin, played by Colin Farrell. Jeffrey Wright plays Commissioner Gordon. Zoe Kravitz plays Catwoman. And John Turturro plays Carmine Falcone. Andy Serkis plays Alfred Pennyworth. So, we've seen Alfred before. We've seen Carmine before. Some different actors stepping in. Jeffrey Wright, obviously a very different choice for Commissioner Gordon. I love Jeffrey Wright, so I'm excited for that. Yeah, I'm just excited for this movie. I think it looks cool. Matt Reeves is a good director. I have faith in him. It's going to be different. It's not in the DCEU, which I think helps, which is why they could still do movies like The Flash or the Aquaman sequel that's coming up and have those kind of still be in the DCEU, and they can do this one separate and have it be its own thing.
Do you think the Batman is going to interact with the Joker?
I don't think so. I don't think so. They've talked about it. If they do, it'll be a different Joker. This Joker does not fit in any other universe except his own, and I don't like that universe. So I wouldn't be excited about him showing up. But yeah, so that's our show for this week. We went about as long as we've been going lately. We've been sticking about an hour and a half. We haven't been meaning to do that. That's just where we go because we like to talk movies. So hopefully you like what we have to say. Hopefully you enjoy this episode about video games. Tune in every Friday for a new episode, and thank you for listening.
Bye, everybody.